My name is Rachel. I am 32 years old, a single mother, and I work long hours as a human resources coordinator in a mid-sized company in Chicago. Life has never been easy, but I have always believed that hard work and persistence could carve out a decent future for my daughter Lily. She is 13 now, bright and curious with a love for drawing and a quiet strength that always amazes me. Every late night I spent at the office, every sacrifice I made, I told myself it was worth it because of her. But nothing prepared me for the night when my entire world collapsed in a single sentence. The surgeon standing under the harsh fluorescent light told me that Lily had fractured her spine in the accident at school, and she needed emergency surgery within 24 hours. Without it, there was a real chance she would never walk again. My hands shook so badly I almost dropped the clipboard of consent forms. The hospital demanded a cosigner for the loan to cover the part insurance would not pay. There was only one logical choice: my parents, Robert and Linda, who had the means and the stability to help. I called them, choking on tears, pleading, "Please just sign. I will handle the payments. Lily's future depends on this." My mother's voice cut through me like a blade, calm and dismissive. "Rachel, you have to stop being dramatic. We cannot put our retirement at risk. She is just a girl. Better to save for Ethan. He is the future of this family." My vision blurred as I heard her words. Then my phone buzzed. Out of habit, I opened Facebook and saw a picture posted minutes earlier. My parents and my sister Monica grinning beside Ethan, my 17-year-old nephew who was leaning against a brand new car with a giant red ribbon. The caption read, "Our boy deserves the best start in life." In that instant, I felt my heart tear in two. My daughter was fighting for the chance to walk again, and my parents had chosen instead to buy their grandson a car. Growing up in my parents' house always felt like living under a constant reminder that I was second best. From as early as I can remember, my younger sister Monica was the golden child, the one who could do no wrong. The one whose achievements were paraded at family dinners while mine were brushed aside as trivial. If I brought home a report card filled with A's, my father would barely glance at it before saying, "That's good, Rachel, but have you seen Monica's science project? She's exceptional." When Monica needed new clothes for a dance or the latest art supplies, my mother would take her shopping without hesitation. When I asked for a simple pair of sneakers because mine were falling apart, the answer was always, "You can wait until next season, Rachel." That refrain, "wait, hold off, not now," became the background music of my childhood. The favoritism only grew sharper as we got older. At Christmas, Monica's gifts were wrapped in shiny paper and piled high, while mine were often just a sweater or a pair of socks. Birthdays turned into humiliations when she would get a new phone or a trip abroad, and I was handed a card with $50 and a perfunctory smile. The cruelest part was the way my parents spoke about it openly as if it were logical. "Girls like Monica shine, Rachel. You're steady, you'll be fine on your own." I internalized that sentence, burying the sting, telling myself to work harder to prove them wrong. When Monica married, the pattern deepened. My parents poured money into her wedding, paying for the venue, the catering, even the down payment on her and her husband's first house. When I became pregnant at 19 and the father disappeared, my parents' support vanished entirely. My mother told me flatly, "You made your choice, you live with it. We won't throw good money after bad decisions." From that day, I knew I was on my own. Every late shift, every unpaid bill, I somehow scraped through every lunch I skipped so Lily could eat it all, came from that abandonment. Yet despite the bitterness, I still held on to the fragile hope that if disaster struck, my parents would not let their granddaughter suffer. That hope is what shattered in the hospital hallway the night I begged for their help, and they chose a car for Ethan instead. The surgeon's words kept echoing in my skull like a drumbeat: 24 hours paralysis, permanent damage. I stood in that sterile hallway, numb and shaking, staring at my phone screen where my parents' smiling faces glowed around Ethan and his new car. The red ribbon stretched across the hood like a cruel joke taunting me. I wanted to scream, to smash the phone against the wall, but I couldn't because Lily needed me to stay upright. I tucked the phone into my bag, pressed my back to the cold wall, and forced myself to think. I tried calling my parents again, hoping, praying they would reconsider. My father picked up this time. His tone was flat, final. "Rachel, we are not discussing this further. Do not guilt us. We have already done more than enough for this family," I whispered. "She's your granddaughter. She could be paralyzed." He sighed, annoyed, and said, "Rachel, don't exaggerate. Doctors always make things sound worse. Ethan deserves a future. You need to learn responsibility." Then he hung up. My knees gave way and I slid down the wall, tears blurring my vision. For a long moment, I sat there helpless. Then Lily's weak voice from her room carried through my memory. "Mom, am I going to be okay?" And I snapped back into motion. If my parents wouldn't help, then I would find another way. I called the bank, but they refused without a cosigner. I dialed friends, colleagues, anyone who might lend me something, but the amounts were too small. Panic clawed at my chest, yet beneath it, a fire began to burn. If my own parents had abandoned me, then I would fight tooth and nail to save my daughter, even if it meant exposing everything they had hidden for years. That night, I sat beside Lily's bed holding her hand as she slept fitfully, IVs and monitors humming. I promised her softly I will find a way, no matter what it takes. I didn't know then that my parents' refusal would not just break my heart, but ignite a chain of revelations, secrets about stolen money, hidden accounts, and betrayals that stretched back decades. But in that moment, the inciting spark was lit. I had no choice but to turn my desperation into action. The next morning, once I returned to the hospital cafeteria to grab a coffee and clear my head, my phone buzzed again. Another notification from Facebook. Against my better judgment, I opened it and nearly dropped the cup. It was a video this time posted by Monica. She was filming Ethan revving the engine of his brand new car, laughing, saying, "Thanks to Grandma and Grandpa for making this dream come true." In the background, my parents waved proudly, my father raising a champagne glass. The video had dozens of comments. "What amazing grandparents! Ethan is so lucky." My stomach twisted so violently, I thought I might be sick right there at the counter. I scrolled further and saw my mother had written a comment herself. "Every penny spent on our grandson is worth it." The words cut deeper than any knife. I tried calling again, but Monica answered this time. Her voice was dripping with disdain. "Rachel, stop being dramatic. You always play the victim. Just because Lily is sick doesn't mean the whole family has to stop living," I whispered. "She might never walk again, Monica. How can you be so cold?" Monica laughed, sharp and cruel. "She's just a girl, Rachel. At least Ethan will carry the family name forward. Do you really expect Mom and Dad to throw away their savings on a lost cause?" My breath caught in my throat. Lost cause. That's what they called my daughter. Later that day, as I sat in the waiting room, one of the nurses approached me quietly. "Mrs. Clark, your parents came by earlier while you were upstairs. They didn't ask to see Lily. They just dropped off a note." She handed me a folded piece of paper. I opened it with trembling hands. In my mother's handwriting, it read, "Rachel, accept reality. We will not enable you any longer. Do what you can with what you have. Ethan's future is our priority." I stared at those words until they blurred into nothing. Humiliation pressed down on me heavier than the hospital walls. They hadn't just refused, they had made it public celebratory, a spectacle for the world to see. My daughter's pain was invisible to them, overshadowed by the shine of a new car and the false pride of keeping their precious grandson on a pedestal. And in that moment, I felt something inside me harden. Their cruelty had pushed me past despair into something sharper, something that whispered of justice, of truth, of consequences. From that day forward, the air around me seemed heavier, charged with a mixture of fear and fury. Every beep from Lily's heart monitor felt like a countdown clock reminding me that the window for her surgery was closing. I refused to let her slip into paralysis because of my parents' selfishness. I sat at the small desk in her hospital room with my laptop, determined to find another way. I applied for every emergency grant, emailed charitable foundations, even reached out to a local church. Each response was the same: too little, too late. The clock kept ticking. Meanwhile, my parents flaunted their generosity toward Ethan at every turn. Monica posted photos of him at the dealership, then another of him cruising down Lakeshore Drive, the city skyline sparkling behind him. The captions were barbs aimed directly at me. "Family means putting your resources where they matter most." I stared at the screen until my hands went cold. The comments below praising my parents' values only deepened the humiliation. My throat tightened as I realized they weren't just ignoring Lily's pain, they were rewriting the story, painting themselves as heroes while portraying me as reckless. One night, exhausted, I opened the old fireproof box where I kept family documents. I hadn't touched it in years. Inside, folded among old tax papers and my birth certificate, was a copy of my grandmother's will. My breath caught. I had almost forgotten that years ago, Grandma had promised to leave a fund specifically for Lily's education and future. But the document in my hands didn't match my memory. The signature pages looked off the amounts shockingly lower. My gut churned as a realization struck me my parents had tampered with it. That suspicion grew when I found a stray bank statement tucked between the papers showing large withdrawals to an account I didn't recognize. Offshore transfers dates aligning perfectly with Monica's wedding expenses and Ethan's prep school tuition. My heart pounded. This wasn't just favoritism. This was theft. They hadn't simply refused to help Lily, they had stolen from her. Fueled by adrenaline, I copied everything and emailed it to my friend Daniel, a paralegal I had met years ago at work. His reply came within an hour. Rachel, this looks serious. If this is what I think it is, they could face charges. But you need more proof. Keep digging. His words lit a fire inside me. The betrayal that had nearly broken me was becoming the weapon I would use. My parents thought they could erase Lily with a pen stroke and a shiny car ribbon, but I was going to prove them wrong. The following week, as Lily's surgery date loomed like a storm cloud, Daniel called me with a tone I had never heard in his voice before, half excitement, half dread. Rachel, I pulled county records and compared them with what you sent me. You were right. The will on file is not the original. It's been amended twice, both times, signed under suspicious circumstances. And guess who the beneficiaries shifted toward Monica's kids? Ethan specifically. I gripped the phone so tightly my knuckles ached. Are you saying my parents forged Grandma's will? Daniel exhaled. I can't say forged yet, but the pattern is clear. Assets intended for Lily were redirected. And the kicker, the amendment was filed just 1 week after Grandma passed when you were still planning the funeral. Rachel, this isn't favoritism, it's fraud. My chest burned with equal parts vindication and rage. I flashed back to my grandmother's last words to me, whispered in her kitchen, her frail hand gripping mine. Don't let them push Lily aside. She deserves a chance. I had brushed it off then as sentimentality. Now it rang like a warning I had failed to heed. That night, while Lily slept restlessly beside her IV stand, I opened the files again, tracing the withdrawals and transfers. I noticed something odd, recurring amounts just under $10,000 shuffled every month into shell accounts. Daniel later explained it was a common tactic to avoid federal reporting thresholds. My parents weren't just greedy, they were calculated, deliberate, and experienced in hiding their tracks. The real blow landed 2 days later. Daniel met me at the hospital cafeteria with a folder. He slid it across the table. Bank subpoenas will take time, but I found property records. A condo downtown purchased outright last year. Guess whose name it's under? I didn't even have to answer. The bile rising in my throat said it all. Monica. The condo wasn't hers. It was Lily's future, stolen brick by brick. My hands shook as I whispered, they bought Ethan a car, Monica a condo, and left Lily with nothing. Not even her legs. Daniel leaned closer, his eyes steely. Rachel, this is bigger than you versus your parents. This is criminal. If we can prove intent, this could end in prison time. For the first time since the nightmare began, I felt a shift. No longer the powerless daughter begging for scraps, I was now holding evidence sharp enough to cut through their lies. The betrayal that had almost destroyed me had cracked wide open into a legal weapon, and I knew exactly where I was going to use it. I didn't plan the confrontation, it forced itself into my hands. Monica had invited the whole family to a dinner at my parents' house to celebrate Ethan's achievements. I almost didn't go, but Daniel urged me. If you want them cornered, you need to put the truth in front of their faces when they think they're untouchable. Bring the documents. Stay calm. Let them reveal themselves. That Saturday, I walked into the dining room carrying a plain black folder. The table glittered with crystal glasses and expensive wine, Ethan bragging about his car, while Monica recorded every word for social media. My parents sat at the head smug and glowing, as if nothing in the world could touch them. When they saw me, my mother's face tightened. "Rachel, we weren't expecting you." My father's tone was sharper. "This is a family dinner, not one of your pity parties." I pulled out the chair directly across from them, my folder resting on the table like a quiet bomb. "I'm not here for dinner. I'm here for the truth." The room stilled. Monica chuckled under her breath. "Here we go again." I opened the folder, sliding copies of the will amendments across the polished wood. "These are not Grandma's wishes. You altered them. You stole from Lily." My father's jaw clenched, but he said nothing. My mother gave a brittle laugh. "Rachel, you don't understand legal documents. That's why you always get yourself into trouble. Your sister and her children deserve stability." "Lily, well, her situation is unfortunate, but life isn't fair." "Unfortunate?" I snapped, my voice breaking. "She's in a hospital bed, and you paraded Ethan in a new car bought with her inheritance. Grandma wanted her future secure, and you erased her from the family like she doesn't exist." Monica leaned forward, smirking. "Even if that were true, what could you do, sue your own parents? Good luck with that. Everyone knows you're desperate, Rachel. No one will believe you." Daniel, who had quietly followed me in, chose that moment to step forward from the doorway. He placed his own folder on the table. "Actually, people will. The county clerk, the bank investigators, and eventually a judge." The blood drained from my parents' faces. For a moment, no one spoke. Ethan shifted uncomfortably, glancing at Monica, whose smugness flickered. My father finally barked, "Get out! All of you! You won't destroy this family with your lies." But his voice cracked, and for the first time in my life, I saw fear behind his eyes. I gathered the papers slowly, deliberately. "You destroyed this family the day you chose greed over your granddaughter's life. The next time we meet, it will be in court." I walked out, Daniel behind me, my pulse racing but steady. The confrontation hadn't ended the war, but it had drawn the battle lines in ink. The courthouse smelled of old wood and cold stone, the kind of place where truth felt heavy like it had been sitting in the walls for decades. I sat at the plaintiff's table with Daniel and his supervising attorney, Ms. Harper, a woman with sharp eyes and a sharper tongue. My parents sat across the aisle, Monica beside them, whispering frantically, her manicured fingers tapping against the polished table. Ethan was absent, too busy parading his car to care about the wreckage about to unfold. When the judge entered the room, hushed, I felt Lily's presence in my chest as if her heartbeat steadied mine. The opening statements were clinical, but then came the exhibits, page after page of financial transfers, property deeds, and the forged amendments. Ms. Harper laid them out like surgical instruments. "Your Honor, these documents show a deliberate redirection of funds meant for the plaintiff's daughter into luxury purchases for other family members. This is not a misunderstanding. It is theft under the guise of guardianship." My father's lawyer tried to object, claiming I was bitter and fabricating drama. But then Ms. Harper called the notary who had supposedly witnessed the amendments. Under oath, the woman admitted she had never actually seen my grandmother sign the documents. She had stamped them at my father's request, trusting his word. A ripple ran through the courtroom. My mother's turn on the stand was worse. Ms. Harper presented printouts of Monica's social media posts, time-stamped within hours of the withdrawals. "Would you say it's coincidental that money meant for Lily's trust account disappeared on the same day this luxury vehicle was purchased?" My mother stammered, her cheeks blotched red. We thought Rachel exaggerated Lily's condition. Surgery seemed excessive, and Ethan needed stability." Her words echoed through the silent courtroom, every syllable a nail in her own coffin. When the verdict came, it landed like thunder. The judge ordered full restitution of Lily's inheritance, seizure of the condo and sale of the car, to replenish the trust. My parents were held liable for damages, their financial accounts frozen until every cent was returned. But it wasn't just the ruling, it was the way the gallery erupted in whispers, reporters scribbling, cameras flashing. Their private betrayal was now public shame. I didn't smile. I didn't celebrate. I simply looked across the aisle at the people who had raised me and said quietly but firmly, "This is just the beginning." My father glared, but his hands trembled as he clutched the table, the mask of control slipping. That night, when I told Lily about the ruling, she squeezed my hand weakly and whispered, "So, they can't hurt us anymore." I kissed her forehead. Not like before. But we're not done yet. Because Daniel had already warned me the evidence hinted at more than civil fraud. There were offshore accounts' unreported assets patterns too big to ignore. What began as a fight for Lily's surgery was spiraling toward something far larger, something criminal. I thought the civil verdict would be enough. Restitution frozen accounts the condo and car reclaimed justice, at least in part. But Daniel's voice on the phone the following week told me otherwise. Rachel, it goes deeper. I had a contact run the bank records through federal compliance checks. Your parents weren't just hiding money, they were laundering it. Offshore accounts, shell corporations in the Cayman Islands. And it's not just about Lily's inheritance, there are millions unreported. The words knocked the air from my lungs. Millions. My entire life I'd watched them pinch pennies with me, deny me opportunities, mock me for struggling. Meanwhile, they had been siphoning money into hidden vaults overseas, living two lives, one of false frugality, one of luxury built on deceit. Daniel slid a folder across my kitchen table later that night. Inside were account numbers, transaction logs, even scanned passports from trips I never knew they'd taken. My father in Bermuda, my mother signing papers in Zurich. Their world was unraveling in black and white. This, Daniel said, tapping the pages is not just fraud against you. This is federal tax evasion. This is prison time. The cruelest detail came from a single line in an email uncovered by subpoena. My mother to my father Lily's medical case might complicate things. Better to stall her surgery until we finish the transfer. If she doesn't survive, the problem solves itself. I felt the room spin. I pressed my palms to the table bile rising in my throat. It wasn't just neglect. It wasn't just favoritism. They had calculated Lily's suffering into their financial plans. My daughter's pain was a line item in their offshore strategy. I stayed awake that night in Lily's hospital room, watching her chest rise and fall under the soft glow of the monitor. Rage burned hotter than fear. They thought they had silenced me with humiliation, with poverty, with manipulation. But now, with Daniel's evidence, I had a weapon sharp enough to cut through every lie. The next morning, Ms. Harper filed a criminal complaint with the district attorney's office. Within days, investigators were at my door taking copies of everything. The civil courtroom whispers had been just a prelude. Now, federal agents were circling, and my parents, once untouchable, were about to face the one thing they feared more than disgrace prison bars. The criminal trial began 6 months later in a federal courthouse far larger and colder than the one where we'd fought over the civil case. By then, Lily had recovered from her surgery thanks to donations and a grant arranged quietly by Ms. Harper's network, and she was able to walk into the courtroom holding my hand. Every step she took steady and determined felt like a victory before the proceedings even began. The prosecution laid out the case with brutal clarity. Offshore accounts, fake trusts, fraudulent amendments, tax evasion that spanned a decade, and then the line about Lily's surgery being a problem that might solve itself. When the prosecutor read it aloud, the jury gasped. One woman covered her mouth, another juror shook his head in disbelief. My parents sat stiff in their seats, dressed in somber suits that couldn't hide the sweat beading on their foreheads. Monica sat behind them pale and shaken, her phone conspicuously absent from her hands. This wasn't a family squabble anymore. This was federal crime. Witnesses took the stand, the notary who admitted to stamping signatures. She never saw a bank compliance officer who explained the pattern of transfers, even a former family accountant who finally broke ranks and confessed that my father pressured him to hide transactions. Piece by piece, the facade of respectability crumbled. Then came my testimony. I stood before the jury and spoke not just as a daughter, but as a mother. I described nights in the hospital, the sound of Lily's strained breathing, the humiliation of begging my own parents while they flaunted a new car for Ethan. I told them how I discovered the will changes, how I held the email in my hands and felt like my blood turned to ice. The courtroom was silent, every eye on me. My parents' attorney tried to paint me as vengeful, desperate, but the evidence drowned out every word. And when my mother herself was called, her defense collapsed. Under cross-examination, she admitted they had prioritized stability for the boys and thought Lily might not have a long future. Her voice trembled, but the words were out. No spin could undo them. The jury deliberated for less than 4 hours. Guilty on all counts: fraud, embezzlement, tax evasion, conspiracy. The judge's sentence was swift: 8 years in federal prison for my father, 7 for my mother. As marshals led them away in handcuffs, cameras flashed. The image of once proud grandparents reduced to orange jumpsuits would circle news outlets for weeks. I didn't cheer. I didn't gloat. I simply held Lily's hand as she whispered, "They can't hurt us anymore, right?" I squeezed back. "No, baby. Not anymore." Outside, reporters swarmed microphones shoved toward me, but I had only one statement. Family is not blood. Family is who fights for you when everything is on the line. The story spread from local papers to national broadcasts. My parents had wanted prestige, reputation, and legacy. What they got instead was infamy. And for me, for Lily, it was the closing of a wound that had bled for generations. The trial ended, but life didn't stop. In the weeks that followed, I woke every morning to a silence I hadn't known before, a silence without fear, without the weight of waiting for the next cruel phone call, the next humiliation. Lily's laughter filled that silence. She walked more each day, sometimes still needing my arm, but her spirit was light. We spent mornings in the park, the autumn air crisp, the sound of leaves crunching beneath her sneakers, reminding me how far we had come. News of my parents' conviction spread quickly. Neighbors whispered former friends distanced themselves, and Monica vanished from social media. For years, my parents had basked in the illusion of respectability, throwing charity dinners and preaching values they never lived. Now their names were associated only with fraud and cruelty. Their legacy was sealed not of honor, but of shame. The restitution from the civil case was finally released into a trust solely under Lily's name. I set up the account with an independent guardian to ensure no one could ever touch it again. Watching her sign her name beside mine on the documents felt like tying a knot, closing off every avenue my parents once exploited. But the most meaningful justice wasn't in the money. It was in the choices I made after. With Daniel's encouragement, I began speaking at local community centers about guardianship abuse and gender bias in families. Mothers, daughters, even sons came to me after talks sharing stories of favoritism, of betrayal, of being told they were less than. Every story reminded me that mine wasn't unique, that silence had hidden countless injustices until someone decided to break it. On Lily's 18th birthday, I gave her a letter I had written the night of the verdict. In it, I told her the truth that her grandparents had chosen greed over her life, but that she had survived not because of them, but in spite of them. Your worth. I wrote was never up for debate. Not in a courtroom, not in a hospital bed, not at a dinner table stacked against you. You are proof that family is chosen, not inherited. She cried as she read it, then folded the letter carefully and placed it in her journal. We didn't attend the sentencing hearing where my parents appealed for leniency. We didn't watch their pleas for sympathy. Their words no longer mattered. What mattered was the life Lily and I were building, one of dignity, boundaries, and peace. As for me, I finally allowed myself to dream beyond survival. I applied for a program to become a legal advocate, channeling everything I had endured into protecting others. It felt like the closing of one book and the opening of another. When people ask me now what lesson I carry from all this, my answer is simple. Blood does not guarantee love, and loyalty cannot be forced by obligation. True family reveals itself in crisis, not in comfort. And though the scars remain, I no longer see them as reminders of betrayal. I see them as proof that we endured, that we fought, and that we won.